This is the Auburn Podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast, brought to you by Auburn Undercover and ESPN 106.7. Painter Sharpless of ESPN 106.7 joining me today. Hello, bud.
What's up, man? How are you?
Man, I am good. We haven't talked or chatted in a while.
What the heck?
I know, it's my fault. I mean, it really kind of is my fault. But here we are together again.
Yes.
And, excuse me. And I wanted to address some of the comments, and if you would help me, that I received during yesterday's show.
Okay.
And yesterday's show was the first show I did in response to Auburn's debacle, disaster, whatever it was when they played LSU on Saturday. And I was pretty hard on the defensive line, the defense as a whole, and Jarrett Stidham, right? So just to give you a little bit of context, I think all of it's valid. So, all right, let's see. Lamar Stevens writes a long one, and I'm just going to read it all, then you kind of tell me what stands out, okay?
Word.
He says, Auburn is a legit top 10 team. Defensively, this team is solid on the D-line and linebacker. The secondary is not an intimidating group yet, okay? Offensively, Jarrett Stidham is a high-level quarterback. The wide receiver group is dangerous, but not the steady, effective, and productive force that Kerryon Johnson was. The O-line and running backs were good enough. LSU is a tough and competitively worthy team for even the very best teams in the country. It takes something or someone extraordinary to dominate that team, or they'd have to get themselves dominated, which is a mistake I think a lot of the fans were thinking would happen. So in a game of two worthy opponents, kind of more same thing, saying that LSU got out-coached and the Auburn coaching staff needs to perform better, especially to fill the production gap left by the departure of Kerryon Johnson. I didn't watch any of that game thinking Kerryon Johnson would have helped them. I mean, I really think it was quarterback play offensively. I think it's interesting, his comment, the O-line and running backs were good enough. I definitely, I'm not going to argue with anything he's saying. I don't think Jarrett Stidham proved he was a high-level quarterback on Saturday.
Yeah, out of all the games he's played in, he's now had two subpar LSU games. The Clemson game was not good a year ago. Those are probably the three that stick out the most in my mind over the last year and not quite a half. And I mean, when you look at Burrow's numbers, talking about the defensive backs, they're not crazy, 15 of 34 for 249 yards, but when his team needed a play, they got it. And that was on more than one occasion. You could point to the 70-yard pass play that got them back in the game. You could point to the 4th and 7 that they converted. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think over the course of the last year, Stidham has proven it, but he didn't show it necessarily with those two turnovers against LSU.
Let's see. A.U. Robinson says if they don't improve a lot, they'll lose 4 to 5 games.
Well, that's a possibility.
My thing is just like, all right, Georgia and Alabama.
Sure.
What's the other one? State or A&M?
It has to be at this point. I mean, I guess you in theory could slip up, but Arkansas looked abysmal against North Texas.
They're not losing this weekend.
You're right. Between that team being as bad as they are, between Gus Malzahn preparing like a champion for every Arkansas game.
Right. That's his Super Bowl.
It's not going to happen. And they have now benched a quarterback for a quarterback, Cole Kelly, that's been benched again for the original quarterback. I mean, they're just trying to figure things out. A&M in the top 25. I've been impressed with them early, but I think Auburn wins that one. And then you're talking about a team against Mississippi State. Auburn has beaten them by an average of 42.5 points over the last couple of seasons. Or excuse me, that was Arkansas, but they have throttled. I got my teams mixed up, but
that's fine.
They have throttled Mississippi State the last 2 years.
Facts don't matter on this podcast. It's totally okay. Totally fine. Jason says the offensive line is pretty bad. The defensive line didn't get any push, so Burrow was able to pick the secondary apart because none of our DBs know how to look for the ball. All right, the way that they are coached, they are coached to play the player, not the ball. Now, if you want to argue with Kevin Steele and how he coaches or whatever, that's fine. I'm not telling you to, what to think about Kevin Steele, but they're doing that because they're coached to do that.
Yeah, and it has worked. I know that they haven't always been the best secondary, but this is a top defense in the country.
Right.
I mean, so you don't have to like it at all times. And so far as the defense is concerned, they have been the weakest unit through 3 games.
The defensive backfield?
Right.
Sure.
But it's also the most inexperienced.
It's also the hardest to play.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
I mean, outside of Alabama, I mean, show me a full defensive backfield that turns around and plays the ball at college. I mean, they're playing in the NFL for doing that.
My hands are up. I don't have an answer for you.
Right. It's easy to say that, but it's like, well, let's be realistic here. Leonard says, if you listen to the CBS commentator when they interviewed Burrow prior to the game, he said in order for LSU to win the game, they would have to pass the ball. Stidham is not a leader. I thought he looked like a former Auburn quarterback that couldn't read a defense.
Just want to give credit to LSU for being one of the best defenses the last few years. That hasn't changed under Dave Aranda. It's fine to say that Jarrett Stidham had one of his least impressive games so far of his career at Auburn.
Stidham?
Yeah.
Worst game at Auburn, in my opinion. I think
even worse than the Clemson game? Because the LSU game last year, some of that wasn't him. Some of it was the situation and the coaching, the play calling. But if you want to go back to that Clemson game, and to be fair,
Clemson's the second game, though.
And that is, I mean, what a way to start things off with that defense. So I'm with you. I think it's fair to say.
I think he showed more leadership and toughness in that Clemson game than he did on Saturday.
I think there's a point to be made there, certainly, with the amount of sacks he took and the optimism he showed afterward.
Now, some of it was his fault.
Yeah.
The coaching staff did not help him in that Clemson game.
Everyone run 40-yard routes.
Right. All right, let's see. The next 2 comments, one has me overreacting to the defensive line, and the other one says that I'm not overreacting about the defense. Which one do we want to do first? Me overreacting or not overreacting?
I say I like it, or I say I don't like it when people overreact, but in this business, I like it when people overreact.
All right, so let's do that one. Cole says, Zach, you are overreacting to the defensive line. 7-man protection schemes are hard to do anything with. The secondary needs to switch from the press man scheme to a zone. The issues are scheme, not talent level.
I don't think they're going to switch their scheme in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Steele's made it clear that they want to line up and beat you. And Auburn should have been able to do that.
I mean, I understand there's a point to be made there. And actually, Tuesday at the weekly press conference, Deshaun Davis and Jarrett Stidham were both there with Coach Malzahn. And Deshaun Davis said, I don't think he said it's too early to tell if our pass rush needs to get better. As he mentioned in that comment, they did use a lot of 7-man protection.
Right.
They had some tackles for loss, only 1 sack. That also came from Deshaun Davis. I'm not ready to panic about the defensive line group. Where are you?
I don't think panic is the word I would say. Mm-hmm. It just seems like Saturday's game was the perfect scenario for what Auburn had been talking up about their defensive line all offseason. It was hot. It was easy to get tired quickly. And all you heard was depth, and the power of the rotation that Auburn was going to field.
You're right.
And you didn't get a push from anybody. I know 7-man rotations are tough. Mm-hmm. But if you're as great as your D-line says it is, you got to do something. You got to do something with it. And if your defense is as good as it is from front to back, I mean, you just got to be ready for that. You got to be ready for that. But if I'm Arkansas or if I'm Mississippi State or if I'm a team ready to play Auburn, I'm doing that all game as of right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the possession, too, really favored LSU. Sometimes that's not a huge deal, but in a game that you're talking about depth and the heat in which the heat index on the field was about 120 degrees. 35 minutes of possession for LSU to 24, plus the additional 2 possessions they gained back from turnovers.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, but all that should have been combated by what we've talked about all offseason, which is not only how good Auburn's line is, but in theory, how deep it is.
SEC is king says, Zach, you are not overreacting about the defense. Joe Burrow looks looked so comfortable in the pocket all Saturday. That's literally the opposite of what we want for opposing quarterbacks. He could have stood in the pocket for 6+ seconds for 90% of pass plays. The only thing is, all right, then he switched to all caps. He doesn't hold on to the ball for 2 years like Stidham does.
I think it's cool to criticize Stidham for hanging on to the ball too long. I think it's an exaggeration to say he had that clean of a pocket.
Okay.
Would you disagree? Do you think that that's close?
I wouldn't disagree. I also understand why he's why he's exaggerating that, though. I do understand why he's doing that.
Well, to the point we just made, with a group this talented and this deep, you would think that the heat and the becoming fatigued would have been less of a problem for Auburn than it would have been for LSU's defensive line.
This guy commented again. You want to hear? SEC is King says they should have tried for Kyler Murray instead of Stidham. He would have fit the offense way more. Plus, he's better. Man,
quickly jumping off the Stidham ship. Got your team to an SEC championship last year?
There's a lot of people mad about Auburn right now. Auburn fans are upset.
I do feel like in some ways, maybe I just perceiving this wrong. I don't feel like Stidham has taken the brunt of the blame for this one. There have been plenty of people out there saying he played poorly, and there's truth to that. But,
I'm the biggest Stidham guy there is, but he's a big reason why Auburn lost on Saturday.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's gotten as much heat. The focus seems to have been on the coaching staff, particularly Gus Malzahn, and I think part of that has to do with him having a hard time holding on to leads. I mean, last year, at least against LSU, you felt like it was a somewhat comparable situation, having a double-digit lead. Mm-hmm. And again, couldn't get it done. But in part, I mean, I think the play calling was way better this year. It just was a matter of execution, turning the ball over. You had 9 penalties for more than 100 yards.
I hate rolling a good quarterback out of the pocket. I hate it.
Tell me about that.
You do that in college football when you're trying to help your quarterback out and maybe doesn't have as strong of an arm, so you can help manipulate the angle and you don't have to throw the ball as far if you're rolling to the right and you're throwing to the right side of the field. But when you have a guy like Stidham who can throw it wherever, you don't want to do that, because when you roll out, it shortens the part of the field where you can throw to. And yes, I know there's design throwback passes and all that, but that's not what that play was. I just don't like that, especially early. If you want to do that in 2-point conversion situations or in the goal line, I like it a little bit more. That's not true. I really don't like that at all if you have a good quarterback. But all right, on Twitter, Anthony tweets at us, at Z Blackerby, I'm sitting here listening to your podcast, and I'm extremely confused. What game did you watch? How was 15 of 35 great quarterback play? Yesterday in the show, if you didn't hear, I said Burrow had a great game. He continues saying they had to use max protect using 7 to 8 to give him time to complete 15. You should have broke down film before doing the podcast. Our DBs are a problem. He had a good game Saturday. Joe Burrow is a big reason why LSU won. His quarterback play and his arm, he impressed me several times, and he did it on important, crucial downs on 3rd and 4th down. That's important.
So is there a way to finesse or make this argument more nuanced that Joe Burrow, in his first start at an away stadium, because they were at a neutral site that favored LSU in the first game in Arlington. I think LSU traveled well. They didn't travel particularly well, by the way, to this game in Jordan-Hare Stadium.
That surprised you?
Yeah, it did a lot. You know, usually they're a team that travels well, and this was a top 15 matchup. I know that the perception going in for a lot of folks was that Auburn was going to win, but nonetheless, Joe Burrow, 15 of 34 for 249, average 7.3 with 1 touchdown. So, yeah, I guess I see where he's coming from, saying the stat line, not impressive, but I'm with you in that when it mattered, he made plays. He set his teammates up. He's had an issue with his receivers dropping the ball, and he did this against an Auburn defense that we've spent now 8 months talking about how good the pass rush is, how good the front seven can be. I feel like there's a case to be made that Burrow was not only integral, but a huge part of this win. I don't know if I can go as far to say he had a good game, though, Zach.
Burrow?
I think you make a good point that without him, no way they win that game.
Who played better on Saturday, him or Stidham? I know. Even if you say Burrow here, it doesn't necessarily mean he had great quarterback play, But between the two, who do you think was better
Is
quarterback?
it fair to say that because his team won and his team did it on the final drive of the game, I think it has to be Joe Burrow? Even though I
just think if Stidham played like Joe Burrow did on Saturday, that Auburn
wins.
Right.
Right. So when you look at the numbers for Auburn and for LSU, I know a lot of people are pointing out Stidham's turnovers, and they should be. And I know a lot of people are pointing out that Joe Burrow didn't complete a lot of his passes, but he did complete passes when the game was on the line, and he didn't turn the ball over and give Auburn more opportunities to get on the board. Mm-hmm. So from that standpoint, I think it's fair to say Burrow outplayed him, yes.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean it was great quarterback play just because he outperformed Stidham. So I agree with that. And maybe I was a bit lazy to say it was great quarterback play. I'm not quite ready to back off it, but I understand why people disagree with me on that, and I'm perfectly cool with
also, I pointed out some of Burrow's statistics, 15 of 34 for 249. Well, Stidham was 16 of 28 for 198. He averaged just a little bit less per pass, and again, didn't have turnovers.
Right.
Burrow, probably need to clarify. Burrow, no turnovers.
Sure.
So,
all right, cool. So let's kind of direct our attention to next week against Arkansas.
Okay.
You mentioned it. I kind of hinted at it yesterday, but it wouldn't shock me if Auburn wasn't prepared last week because Malzahn wanted to prepare them for Arkansas because he loves beating Arkansas.
He does.
So, I mean, is there anything Auburn could do against Arkansas to prove anything, right? Because, I mean, Malzahn's done the whole we got to bounce back press conference now twice, once after the game. Now, of course, obviously yesterday, Tuesday's presser where, he addressed the media. Is there anything Auburn can do this weekend where it's to kind of prove to fans, okay, because I'm thinking even if it's 56-3 or, just a total shellacking, I don't think it really means anything.
The one thing I think Auburn's got to do, maybe two things.
Okay.
Offensive line, whether it's Caleb Kim or Nick Brahms, and at his Tuesday press conference that you just referenced, Malzahn made it clear that there's not going to be shuffling at this point anyway, except at the center spot. They are giving Nick Brahms reps with the ones, and had it not been for that injury, maybe things play out differently in fall camp. Although, to be fair to Kim, maybe not. Maybe he just looked better in fall camp. But Brahms was warming up on the sideline against LSU.
Yeah. I mean, I said this a little bit yesterday when I was just kind of monologuing and rambling for 20-plus minutes on the show. But, I said I'm not totally sold that the offensive line issue is a personnel thing. I think it's just kind of it's going to take time. But I totally get why they should try it. I think they should kind of switch it up just for the sake of switching it up and putting Brahms in at center. But I'm not totally sold that there's a difference between the two.
That's fair. I think if it was evident that he was just so much better after Caleb Kim struggled against Washington, they probably would have looked already at making that change with the buffer between this huge game against LSU and the big opener.
Right. But I do think you should start Brahms or at least give him a lot of playing time at center against Arkansas just to see.
Yeah. And you got Southern Miss right afterwards. So if you decide to go that direction,
you got a little more time.
Absolutely. And what's been interesting about Malzahn is that we have seen offenses routinely come out sluggish in the first couple of weeks. And then, like every team or like most good teams, of course, they continue to evolve and get better. But
Auburn fans love it when Auburn teams start slow.
Boy.
They love it.
To be fair to Auburn fans, though, it is kind of weird that it takes 3 to 4 weeks. It's like, what were the 8 months before the season for?
No, I know that was sarcasm, but I 100% agree with you. I think it's crazy. And my biggest thing was, okay, well, it's offensive line related, and now that Herb Hand is gone, I thought J.B. Grimes was going to have this O-line ready to go. Now, injury may play into it. If Nick Brahms comes in and it's clear that he is better than Caleb Kim and he's a starter from here on out, I don't think you can fully put that on J.B. Grimes due to injury. I don't think that's going to happen. It could. It totally could. It could give them a little bit of a spark. You don't know. But, yes, I agree. It is bizarre how it takes this coaching staff several weeks to kind of figure out what it has.
Yeah, and Arkansas got trounced at home by North Texas, who's 3-0. But come on, it's North Texas. Arkansas should be recruiting better talent. They were at home. Like I mentioned a moment ago, You start Ty Story at the beginning of the year. He gets benched against Colorado State for Cole Kelly. Cole Kelly plays. They threw 6 interceptions in that game against North Texas. Now
that's like Nathan Peterman bad.
It is not good. And now Ty Story, the redshirt junior, back in. Chad Morris has said for this week's game at Auburn. I just don't, I don't know, man.
It's going to be bad.
It's going to be ugly. This is a good opportunity for Auburn to fix some things, to tune up. And it's odd. They've had some moments like that in 2013 and 2017. In both years, they lost to LSU.
Yes.
Went on to win the SEC West.
A light just went on in the studio.
But anyway.
It's like a strobe light in here.
Yeah.
It just flashes in the other studio.
I've had one seizure in my life, and I'm not so sure about this. But anyway, yeah, so if Auburn takes these 2 weeks and gets a lot better,
yeah,
sure, but they have made things tough on themselves. I don't think it's going to be much of a problem to beat the hell out of this Arkansas team. And I don't think that Gus Malzahn, him and Chad Morris are friends. I don't think his goal in here is to embarrass Arkansas, but he'll be ready. I think the team will be angry. I think they'll be prepared. And then if there's any indicator, like the last couple of seasons after losing to LSU, they came out firing in the next couple of games. So we'll see if that trend continues.
Plug it away, brother.
Please check out ESPN 106.7 from 11 to 1. The lunch break got all the Auburn news you need. And then certainly want you to listen to that at ESPNAU.com if you can't listen locally. But show's great. Got a lot of content. It's a lot of fun during football season. It'll be fun all year, though. Auburn sports looking up. And, man, football season has been entertaining through the first 3 weeks. So definitely tune in. That's 11 to 1 each day on ESPN 106.7. And we've got a podcast for you as well, so you can get that however you need it.
Be sure to tune in to the show tomorrow. You can follow me on Twitter at @ZBlackerby. Follow the show at Auburn Podcast. This has been another edition of the Auburn Podcast.